Alright guys, so this is usually how it goes. You get the kickoff, and obviously at the beginning of the game I set up my audibles, and I've gotten to the point to where I can set up all of my audibles before the clock runs out, and I could come out and run the first play with about 11 seconds to go on the play clock. Okay, so this is me setting up my audibles. I have some of the plays in videos, but not all of them. And when I come out, what do we know? Right away you can tell this guy's in dollar. And I'm like, oh, there it is right there. Right there. This is what players do online. I don't know if they do it in regs, but obviously in MUT, you will see this literally, I would say about 80% of the time. Players will just come out in dollar. They will run this formation, this personnel grouping the entire game. It doesn't matter what formation you come out in, this is what they run. And here's the thing, I've gotten in plenty of conversations with different players online because of what I do against it. At first I was labbing against different players to see how it works in Madden. Okay, but theoretically against a personnel grouping of dollar, you should be able to run all over it. In real life, there's a reason why no team would run a personnel grouping like this as their base. Because the opposing team would run it down their throat and there would be nothing that they can do to stop it. Okay? But it's Madden, and Madden is nowhere close to perfect, and that is why a lot of gimmick players get away with things like this. Okay? So I know theoretically what should work against it, and you guys have heard me say this numerous times before. I've always stated that certain runs are better against certain fronts than others. That's the way I see it, right? There's certain situations to where I like inside zone more than outside zone, and etc. Right? So right away, I go to my audibles and I set up my power run here from one formation. And in that very same formation, I throw in the stretch running play as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and forth between those two running plays. But let's pay attention to something. This is a different game. I want to show you something where I checked into the stretch running play. And watch how I run the play, and my tight end did not stretch outside. Notice how he stems back inside to try to take the backside linebacker, which messes up the entire play. Now, does that happen all the time? No. The reason why I'm showing you this, though, is because I've added a flair to my power running game and my stretch running game when I run into this formation, and it's right here. How about we go here and we start fooling around with the unbalanced formation concept. Now, obviously, this isn't a real unbalanced formation, I don't believe. What I do is I go and I set up a right tackle or a left tackle, and I put him at tight end. Now, I don't know if this would be theoretically an unbalanced formation. I think a true unbalanced formation is where you would put like a tackle at the tight end position, and then you put the tight end at the left tackle position, and etc. Right? But we're not doing that. I'm just putting a right tackle at the tight end position, and we will see a major difference in how this deals with this particular formation. But this is what really struck me as very interesting, for a lack of better words. I spoke with a couple of people that I played against, maybe like 3 different people, when they were running dollar every single play, and I was just running it on them, right? They would get on the mic and say, all you do is run, okay? And my response was, in each of the cases, you're running dollar, like you're running a dollar formation. And then they would respond and be like, well, so what? What does that mean? Like, the whole point is they really don't understand the fundamental disadvantages and advantages of personnel, right? There's a reason why, theoretically, if a team comes out in I formation, the opposing team would come out in their base formation, 4-3 or 3-4. There's a reason why you wouldn't want to come out in dime against an I formation. Right? There's a reason why if a team comes out in 5 wide receivers that you wouldn't want to come out in 4-3. And it's all about personnel groupings and matching one another. Okay? So let me get to the point here. So usually when it comes to personnel, you kind of want to match your opponent. Now, there are obviously exceptions to the rule. Maybe you have an advantage elsewhere in regards to personnel. But, in general, offensive linemen usually get matched up with defensive linemen. That's what you would want. Backs and tight ends usually match up with linebackers, and then you have receivers matched up with defensive backs. And I have the pass and the run set up here. So, if everyone is on the same level in regards to skill level, okay, I would say that we're even on both fronts with all of these matchups, okay? Now, what if we can get an offensive lineman matched up against a linebacker? Now, obviously, nothing would happen in the passing game because offensive linemen aren't involved in the passing game, really. Okay, maybe in screen passes, okay, but I left that blank there. Maybe I should fill something there, okay? But in the running game, an offensive lineman getting head up on a linebacker would be a slight advantage for the offensive lineman, okay? On the flip side of that, what if we can get backs and tight ends matched up against defensive backs, more so tight ends? What I mean by that is, if we were to get something in the passing game to where we get a defensive back matched up against a tight end in space, well, usually you would favor the defensive back in that situation, right? Because they're better in space, they're better in pass defense, and then tight ends aren't as savvy in running routes and etc., right? Now, obviously, you have bona fide stars like Travis Kelce and etc., right? But this is just the general rule. But on the flip side of that, in the running game, that would be an advantage for the tight end. A tight end, a bigger type player matched up with blocking a defensive back, a smaller player, that tight end would have an advantage. That would be a major advantage for the tight end. On the flip side of that, what if we can get an offensive lineman matched up against a defensive back in the running game? That defensive back would get dominated, right? So let's get back to that game where we got the gimmick dollar player. Usually when you come out like this and they come out in dollar, they're going to run this every single play. They are not going to stop. So this is the game in which I showed you to where I went and set up my audibles where I have power and stretch in the same formation, and I put a tackle at tight end. Okay, and we will check out how it plays out. So here we snap the ball, I run stretch, and as you can see, look at the discrepancy in size here. Clearly outmatched this small defensive back, and we get a massive gain there. So I decided to run the stretch running play because of the front that is presented there. Notice how he pinched the defensive lineman in, and that's what they usually do when they come out in dollar. But another weakness of this is their personnel when you come out in dollar. They come out with 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 defensive backs. Now, obviously, you put a lot more speed out on the field with that personnel. However, you are a lot less stout in the running game, in your run defense. And then on top of that, we're adding a lot of beef up front by adding that offensive lineman at the tight end position. We have 6 offensive linemen, 1 back, and 3 receivers. So linebackers are going to be matched up against offensive linemen in the running game, and even defensive backs will be matched up against offensive linemen in the box with different types of runs. And you will see in this game how we can get a lot of matchups in favor of us in the running game. Okay, it's all about figuring out the best type of run to utilize against the front that they present, and then obviously we have an advantage in the personnel department based upon what we've done. So I ran the stretch again because he pinched inside again, and as you can see, we got 9 yards on the next run. So I go no huddle because I want to keep this personnel on the field, and notice how he doesn't pinch the defensive line in, right? So this is where I switch to the power running game because I like how it blocks this particular front, right? So you don't want to pinch it in because you notice that I'm stretching using the stretch run, and now I run the power run, and look at that gaping hole inside. I'll rewind it. Watch the defensive end to the right. Notice how he's definitely playing outside. I don't know what he did with his defense, but he's obviously in fear of the stretch run. Look at that defensive lineman. He goes so far upfield that it's so much easier for my right tackle to just throw him out of the way, right? So that's why I love to pair the stretch run and the power run, and then on top of that, I like to throw in a tackle at tight end, and then we could just go to work in the box with the different runs. So now he pitches them in, So now I'm running a stretch running play, and then I add a little flair to it by bringing someone from the backside to get more on the strong side. And pay attention to the defensive back. We get a right tackle and a receiver doubling him on the stretch run, and he gets just thrown out of the club because, again, there's just a size discrepancy in the box. So 4 straight plays, 4 rushes, 54 yards. So, I think this was later on in the game. I decided to run stretch run. I ran weak side, and we got 10 yards. And we're going to pay attention to something here. No huddle again. I'm going to run weak side again, and then we run into a problem like this, which is pretty frustrating. Our wide receiver gets thrown like a little doll, and lo and behold, this guy throws the too small gesture, and that's just disrespectful. But again, that's a defensive back matched up with our wide receiver. That's kind of like a situation where no one really has an advantage in the running game. It's whoever gets the best of who, okay, by position. And, if you have a small receiver who's not really good in blocking on the run, you can run into issues like that, even against a defensive back. But that's just with that one player in that one situation on that one play. We still have the advantage all the way across the board in personnel with everybody else on the field. Okay, so sometimes you will get that. Your wide receiver doesn't block very well, and the defensive back gets the best of him, and he's able to make a play. But you can try to figure out ways to get a tackle or a tight end on that small defensive back, and you're able to do that because they're coming out in dollar. They're not matching personnel. How about a situation where we can get our left tackle here to throw the small fry out of the club, right? Because, again, we have an advantage in size, and obviously the tackle is going to dominate a defensive back in the running game. So here, despite him pinching in, I decided to run power, and I noticed that our offensive lineman, I believe it's our center, got beat inside by a defensive tackle. So it looked like he pinched the defensive lineman in, and then he's crashing them in as well. Okay, so you keep note of this. I noticed this when I was running the ball, and obviously we're going to get a negative play. So in response to this is where, okay, now I'm going to run stretch. And that's why I interchange them when I run into dollar. So if you pinch them in, I favor more the stretch. And if you start slanting them in, I favor stretch as well, right? And if you open them up, that's when I favor power. Oh, remember that play where we ran stretch to the weak side and our wide receiver got dominated by a defensive back and he was able to make a play? Well, how about we throw in a tight end in the slot? We have our offensive lineman at tight end, right? But we just move our tight end in the slot as opposed to the wide receiver. So now we get a tight end in the running game blocking this defensive back. So that's a slight advantage in our favor. And this is something you can utilize to get rid of the problem of a potential one-on-one matchup to where your receiver doesn't block very well inside. We snap the ball, and our tight end is able to hold up very well against that defensive back, and we're able to get out in space. So that's it, guys. I'll leave it at that. Don't abandon the run. If you get 5 yards a carry, that's excellent. I think when you run into dollar, what you want to do is just stay in manageable downs. Don't get into 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 18, and that's when you can run into issues. If you keep a more balanced approach and you implement this tactic that I've shown you, I think this will help you in the long run in regards to dealing with dollar. Now here I'm showing you clips of me running this type of strategy without throwing the offensive tackle at tight end. Okay, and I got varied success, but not success in the degree that I would want in Madden. And I think Madden's just not very good at imitating real life interactions between personnel groupings like this. But I think you get a way better chance when you put an offensive lineman at tight end and you attack with a lot more beef up front. Okay, and again, I like to run the stretch and the power run against that front, depending on how they shift and slant, and you can interchange between the two. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. I hope you got something from this video. I'm sorry for the length, And I hope you keep coming back for more, man. Peace.